deep calls unto deep. That is what the scripture says, and that is exactly what is happening in this very moment. Something in the depths of heaven is calling out to something in the depths of who you are, and the reason this message found you today is because your spirit answered that call before your mind even had a chance to catch up. You are here because you were summoned, not by a channel, not by a recommendation, but by the voice of the living God who saw this exact moment written in the timeline of your life before you ever drew your first breath on this earth. Sit down. That is not a suggestion. That is an instruction from the throne room itself. Because what God is about to release into your life is so enormous, so far beyond what your current understanding can contain, that if you are still standing, still restless, still trying to figure it out with your own strength, you will miss the magnitude of what is seconds away from crashing into your world. Heaven does not deliver its greatest moves to those who are rushing. Heaven delivers its greatest moves to those who finally become still enough to receive. You need to understand something about this moment. This is not a coincidence. There is no such thing as a coincidence in the life of someone who belongs to God. Every thread, every click, every quiet pull that drew your attention to this message right now was the hand of a sovereign God orchestrating a divine appointment. The algorithm did not find you. God did. And He did not find you to simply encourage you with nice words. He found you because something massive, something that has been building in the invisible realm for years, is now ready to break through the surface of your natural world. And He wanted you seated and prepared when it arrives. You are a chosen one, not in the sense of arrogance or pride, not in the sense that you are above others, but in the ancient, sacred, and weighty sense that before the foundations of the earth were laid, God looked through all of time and He selected you. He set you apart. He marked you with a calling so specific, so precise, that no one else on this planet can carry what you were built to carry. And the reason that truth has not fully landed in your heart yet, is because the journey you have walked has made it difficult to believe. The road has been long. The nights have been heavy. The moments of doubt have been real, and they have been many. But none of that changes what God declared over you before time began. Think about where you are right now in your life. Think about everything that has happened over the last season. The unexpected turns. The things that fell apart when you were so sure they were going to work. The doors that closed in your face. The people who walked away. The plans that crumbled. The version of your future that you had mapped out in your mind that no longer looks like the life you are actually living. If any of that resonates with you, then you need to hear this clearly, because God is speaking directly into that specific pain right now. None of it was random. None of it was punishment. None of it was the universe being indifferent to your suffering. Every single one of those moments was a deliberate act of divine preparation, because what is about to hit your life is so massive that it required a level of preparation that did not feel like preparation while you were living through it. You have been in a furnace, and you did not know it was a furnace because furnaces do not come with labels. They come disguised as disappointment. They come wearing the face of betrayal. They come through seasons of waiting so long that you began to wonder whether God had forgotten your name. But He did not forget your name. He has never stopped saying your name. In fact, in the very moments when the silence was the loudest, when the heavens felt like brass and your prayers felt like they were bouncing off the ceiling, God was the closest He has ever been. He was not silent because He was absent. He was silent because He was working at a depth that human words could not reach, shaping something in you that is now ready to be revealed. This is the moment of the reveal. This is the divine arrest, the holy interruption, the sacred pause that heaven has placed in the middle of your day to say to you directly, stop everything and listen. Because what is coming is not small, and you need to be spiritually awake and positioned to receive it. The God who created galaxies with a word, who parted seas and raised the dead and turned water into wine, that same God has been engineering something specific for your life. And the engineering phase is now complete. You are not here by accident. You are not reading or hearing these words by chance. Something in you already knew this was for you before the sentence was finished. That knowing is not your imagination. That is the Holy Spirit confirming in your spirit that this message is a divine delivery, a word from the throne room addressed specifically to you. So before we go any further, take a breath. Let that truth settle. You were summoned here today. You are chosen. And what is about to hit your life is massive. If you feel that confirmation in your spirit right now, if something stirred inside you when these words began, do not keep that to yourself. Type the number 77 in the comments right now as a declaration that you received this summons. Like this message and share it with someone who needs to hear that God has not forgotten them. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. Because what is coming in this message is only the beginning of what God wants to pour into your life through this channel. You were not meant to walk this journey alone, and you were not meant to encounter this word just once. You have been carrying something that most people around you could never see. It did not show on your face most days because you learned early how to wear composure like a second skin. You learned how to answer, "I am fine," with such convincing ease that even the people closest to you stopped asking what was really going on beneath the surface. And so the weight stayed yours. Private, silent, heavy in a way that only you and God fully understood. But God is pausing everything right now to speak directly into that hidden place. Not the version of you that shows up for others. Not the version of you that holds it together in public. The real version. The one that sits alone sometimes and wonders how much longer this road is going to be. The one that has cried prayers instead of speaking them because the words ran out long before the pain did. The one that has replayed certain moments over and over, asking what you did wrong, what you could have changed, why it happened the way it did. God is speaking to that version of you right now, and what He wants you to know is this: every single thing you have carried was known to Him before you ever picked it up. There is a verse tucked inside the Psalms that says God collects every tear in a bottle. That image is not poetic decoration. That is a theological statement about the nature of God and the way He regards your suffering. He does not watch your pain from a distance with detachment. He catches it. He stores it. He counts it. Every tear you have shed in the silence of your bedroom. Every tear you swallowed in public because the moment was not right to let it fall. Every tear that burned behind your eyes when you were fighting too hard to cry, God collected all of it. And in the economy of heaven, those tears are not evidence of weakness. They are evidence of depth. They are proof that you felt things fully, that you loved without reservation, that you gave what you had even when giving cost you more than you could afford. The weight you have been carrying alone did not arrive all at once. It built slowly, season by season, layer by layer, the way sediment accumulates at the bottom of a river. It started perhaps with a dream that did not come true when you believed it would. Then came a relationship that broke in ways you never anticipated. Then a loss that rearranged everything you thought you understood about your life and your future. Then a period of waiting so extended that the waiting itself became a kind of grief, a mourning for the life you thought you would be living by now. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, a quiet and dangerous question began to form in the back of your mind. A question you may have never said out loud, but that lived in you nonetheless. The question was simply this: does God actually see me? He sees you. He has always seen you. The answer to that question is not complicated, and it is not conditional. It is absolute. Before you were formed in your mother's womb, God knew you, not knew of you. Knew you, the intimate, personal, all-encompassing knowledge that belongs only to the one who created you. He knew the weight you would carry in this particular season. He knew the specific shape of the loneliness you would feel. He knew the names of the people who would walk away and the timing of the doors that would close. He knew it all, and he allowed you to walk through it, not because he was indifferent to your pain, but because he was using your pain as the precise instrument of your preparation. Preparation is rarely comfortable. In fact, the most significant preparation processes in the history of Scripture were marked by suffering that seemed completely disproportionate to the calling. Joseph did not spend a polite afternoon in a slightly inconvenient situation. He was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned for years. And yet every single one of those crushing circumstances was God engineering the exact character, the exact resilience, the exact wisdom that Joseph would need to steward the massive assignment that was waiting on the other side. The pit was not the punishment. The pit was the prerequisite. You are a Joseph, not in the sense of comparison, but in the sense of pattern. The pattern of heaven is consistent. God does not prepare small people for large assignments with easy roads. He prepares large people for large assignments, with roads that would break anyone who was not genuinely chosen. And the fact that you are still here, still breathing, still seeking, still showing up, even when showing up cost you everything you had left, is the evidence that you are not a small person in the eyes of heaven. You are someone who has been forged, and forged things do not break under pressure. Forged things are built for it. Think about the specific things that were taken from you. Not borrowed, not delayed, taken. The relationships that ended. The opportunities that dissolved. The versions of your future that you had to bury because they simply were not going to happen the way you planned. There is a grief in that kind of loss that is legitimate and real, and God does not ask you to pretend that it was not painful. He does not ask you to manufacture a smile over genuine sorrow or to rush through the mourning faster than your heart is actually able to move. What he does ask is that you trust him with the wreckage, because in the hands of God, wreckage is not the end of the story. In the hands of God, wreckage is raw material. Every ending you have survived has been God removing something that would have limited what he is about to do. Some of those things felt like they were essential to your survival, which is why losing them felt catastrophic. But God sees further than your comfort. He sees the destination, and he knows what cannot make the journey with you. The relationships that fell away were not accidents of fate. The doors that closed were not evidence that God had turned his face from you. They were strategic removals, divine subtractions that were making space in your life for additions so large that your old life simply could not have contained them. There is something deeply important you must understand about the weight you have been carrying. It was never meant to be permanent. Burdens in the economy of heaven are always seasonal. They have a beginning and they have an end, and the end is not arbitrary. The end is timed to the moment when what the burden produced in you is fully mature, fully formed, fully ready to be used for the purpose it was always preparing you for. And here is the word of the Lord for you in this moment. The season of the burden is closing. What you have been carrying in the silence, what you have held without recognition, without applause, without anyone truly understanding the cost of your endurance. God saw every moment of it, and He is now moving to honor it in ways that will leave no room for doubt about where it came from. Your tears built something. Your faithfulness in the darkness built something. The prayers you prayed when you did not feel anything in return built something. The mornings you chose to keep going when everything in you wanted to stop built something. And all of it, every ounce of it, has been accumulating in the unseen realm, constructing the foundation of what is about to land in your visible life. Heaven does not waste sacrifice. Heaven does not overlook endurance. Heaven is a place of perfect accounting. And every act of trust you made in the middle of your pain has been recorded, honored, and is now being prepared for return. You were not forgotten in the waiting. You were not invisible in the silence. You were not overlooked in the seasons when no one seemed to notice how hard you were fighting just to hold the line. God noticed. And not only did He notice, He was moved by it. The scripture says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, not distant from them, not waiting for them to recover before He draws near. Close, intimately, personally, undeniably close. Which means that in your lowest moments you felt most alone, you were actually surrounded by the presence of the God who made you, who loves you without condition, and who has been working on your behalf every single second of every single day that you have been walking this road. The weight you carried alone was never meant to define you. It was meant to develop you. And the development is now complete enough for what comes next. The next chapter of your life does not begin with more striving. It does not begin with more earning or more proving or more surviving. It begins with receiving. It begins with open hands and a heart that is finally willing to believe that the God who allowed the wait also prepared the reward. And the reward that is coming is not small. It is not modest. It is not just enough. It is overflow. It is abundance. It is the kind of reversal that only God can engineer, where everything that was taken is returned with interest, and everything that was broken is restored beyond its original condition. You carried the weight alone for long enough. Heaven has taken notice. And what is coming next is the answer to every prayer you prayed in the dark. There is something that has followed you your entire life, a quiet but persistence that you do not quite belong where you are standing. Not in a broken way, not in a way that points to something wrong with you, but in a way that feels more like a person wearing borrowed clothes, like the environment around you was never quite tailored to the dimensions of who you actually are. You have sat in rooms full of people and felt completely alone. You have been surrounded by noise and felt a silence inside you that none of the noise could reach. You have watched others move through life with an ease that you could never fully replicate, not because you were less capable, but because something in you was always oriented towards something further, something deeper, something that the world immediately around you simply could not supply. That feeling was not a malfunction. That feeling was a compass. From the very beginning, you were different. Not different in the way that the world uses that word as a polite way of saying strange or difficult or hard to place. Different in the way that heaven uses that word, set apart, designated, carrying a frequency that does not match the common signal, because it was never meant to. When God designed you, He did not use the standard template. He reached into a specific and intentional blueprint that He had drawn up before the world existed, and He constructed you according to that blueprint with a precision that left nothing to chance. Every part of your personality, every dimension of your sensitivity, every way in which you perceive the world differently from the people around you every gift that sometimes felt more like a burden than a blessing. All of it was deliberate. All of it was architectural. All of it was God building a vessel that could carry something the ordinary could not hold. The rejection you experienced did not happen to you. It happened for you. That is a statement that takes time to settle. Because rejection is one of the most painful experiences a human heart can walk through. And the instinct when something hurts that deeply is to search for what you did wrong, to find the flaw in yourself that caused the outcome. But not all rejection is the result of your failure. Some rejection is the result of your assignment. When God is separating someone for a specific purpose, He will sometimes allow certain environments, certain relationships, certain communities to push that person out, not because the person was lacking, but because staying would have cost them the very thing they were created to become. Think about the moments in your life when you tried to fit in and it simply would not work. When you adjusted yourself, dimmed yourself, made yourself smaller and quieter and more palatable, and still found that you were on the outside looking in. That was not rejection from people, that was protection from God. Because the place that would not receive you were not your destination, they were your departure point. And every time a door closed in your face, every time a group moved on without you, every time a relationship dissolved despite your best efforts to hold it together, heaven was saying, not here, not them, not this. Because what is ahead of you requires a different alignment, a different community, a different stage, one that is proportionate to the actual size of what God put inside you. You were never meant to blend in. That truth may have caused you years of pain, but it is also the most liberating truth you will ever receive about yourself. The things that made you feel like an outsider were the very things that marked you as chosen. Your depth of feeling in a world that rewards shallowness. Your hunger for meaning in a culture that is satisfied with distraction. Your inability to numb yourself to injustice. To pretend that things are fine when they are not. To go along with the crowd when the crowd was moving in the wrong direction. These are not inconveniences. These are the hallmarks of a prophetic nature. These are the characteristics of someone who was built to stand in front of others and carry a light that does not flicker even when the wind is strong. There is a word in Scripture about the stone that the builders rejected. The builders looked at it, examined it by their own standards, decided it did not fit their project, and cast it aside. And that very stone became the cornerstone. The cornerstone is the most important stone in any structure. It is the stone by which every other stone is measured and aligned. Every builder who rejected it was wrong, not because they were evil, but because they were measuring according to human standards, and the stone was built to a divine specification they did not have the eyes to recognize. You are that stone. Every person who underestimated you, every room that made no space for you, every opportunity that seemed to pass you by, was simply the work of builders who did not have the blueprint. God has the blueprint. And His construction, you are not an afterthought. You are the cornerstone. The isolation you felt in those seasons was not abandonment. It was apprenticeship. When God is preparing someone for a significant assignment, He will often draw that person aside into a season of intentional separation, a time away from the noise and the crowd, and the constant demand of fitting in, so that the voice of God can become louder than the voice of the culture. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before he stood before Pharaoh. David spent years on hillsides tending sheep before he ever stood before a king. Even Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before his public ministry began. The pattern is ancient and it is consistent. Separation is not rejection. Separation is seminary. and the things God taught you in the lonely seasons, the things you learned about yourself and about Him in the quiet places that no one else witnessed. Those lessons are the very curriculum that qualifies you for what is now coming. You need to stop measuring your life against the lives of people who were never called to walk your road. Comparison is one of the most effective weapons the enemy uses against chosen ones, because it takes your eyes off your own divine timeline and fixes them on someone else's, and then it whispers that you are behind, that you are less than, that something has gone wrong. But your timeline was never meant to look like anyone else's timeline. Your path was custom drawn. Your seasons were specifically sequenced. Your delays were individually calculated. And the life that is being prepared for you on the other side of this season is not a generic blessing. It is a bespoke destiny, cut and tailored to the exact shape of who you are and what you were created to do. The uniqueness that sets you apart in your hardest seasons is the same uniqueness that is about to set you above in your greatest season. The depth that made you feel like too much for certain rooms is the very depth that qualifies you to carry what is coming. The sensitivity that made you feel fragile in a hard world is actually the refined instrument through which God intends to move powerfully. Nothing about the way you were made was a mistake. Nothing about the way your story has unfolded was an accident. It was all the sovereign hand of a God who does not make errors, shaping a life that is about to step into something so far beyond ordinary that the word ordinary will no longer apply to you. Before we continue forward into what God is releasing, there is something we want to say from the heart. This channel exists for one reason only, and that is to carry words like this one to people like you, chosen ones who need to hear that they are seen, that their pain has purpose, and that God has not forgotten them. If this message has touched something real in you today, if it has reached the part of you that needed to hear it, we want to ask you gently and sincerely to like this video and share it with someone who is walking a hard road right now. Someone who needs to be reminded that their rejection was redirection. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, because there is so much more coming, and you do not want to miss what God is going to continue to release through this space. And if you feel led to go further, if you want to help this ministry stay on its feet so that these words can keep reaching the ones who need them, there is a support link in the description below. Every contribution is entirely voluntary, and whether you are able to give or not, we are genuinely grateful that you are here, that you are listening, and that you are on this journey with us. Your presence here matters. Your faithfulness to seek the Word of God matters. And you, chosen one, matter more than you currently know. There is a moment in the life of every chosen one when heaven stops whispering and begins to move. Not with the gentle nudge of a suggestion, not with the quiet impression that you might be inclined to second guess or dismiss, but with the unmistakable weight of divine momentum, the kind of movement that you feel in your bones before you see it with your eyes. That moment for you is not somewhere in the distant future. That moment is now, and the reason God told you to sit down before this message began is because what He is about to tell you next requires your full attention, your settled spirit, and a heart that is open enough to receive something that your natural mind may initially resist believing. The shift has already been released from heaven. Read that again and let it move past your intellect and down into the place where faith actually lives. The shift has already been released, not scheduled, not pending approval, not waiting on you to earn it or prove yourself worthy of it. Already released, already dispatched from the throne room, already in motion in the invisible realm. moving toward the coordinates of your life with a precision and a certainty that nothing in the natural world has the power to intercept. What God has released over your life is already done in the Spirit, and the only question that remains is not whether it will arrive, but whether you will be in a posture to receive it when it does. This is one of the most important things you can understand about the way God works. He does not operate on a timeline that begins when you can see the evidence. He operates from a realm where the end is as certain as the beginning, where what He has declared is already accomplished before it manifests in the natural. When God spoke to Abraham and told him he would be the father of many nations, Abraham had no children. When God told Joshua that He had given him the land of Canaan, Joshua had not yet taken a single step into it. When Jesus stood at the tomb of Lazarus, He did not pray and ask God to consider raising him. He spoke to a dead man in the present tense. He spoke as someone who already knew the outcome, because in the realm from which he was operating, the outcome was already settled. That is the realm from which God is speaking to you right now. And what He is saying, from that realm of already done certainty, is that the shift in your life has been released. The reversal of every loss has been signed off on. The restoration of what was taken has been authorized. The open doors that you have been pressing against for seasons upon seasons have been unlocked from the inside. You could not open them from your side no matter how hard you pushed. Not because you lacked faith, not because you prayed the wrong prayers, but because they were being held shut from the inside until the precise moment when everything that needed to be in place on the heavenly side of the equation was ready. And that readiness has now been reached. You need to understand what the delay was actually protecting you from. This is the part that the enemy does not want you to see, because if you see it clearly, all the bitterness and discouragement that the waiting produced in you will dissolve instantly. The delay was not punishment. The delay was not divine indifference. The delay was protective positioning. When God delays the arrival of a significant blessing, it is almost always because one of two things is true. Either the one receiving the blessing is not yet fully prepared to steward what is coming, or the infrastructure in the natural realm is not yet fully in place to support what God is about to do. In your case, both of those things were true simultaneously, and God in His infinite wisdom was working on both fronts at the same time, developing you internally, while arranging the external landscape of your life, so that when the blessing arrived, it would find a prepared vessel in a prepared environment. Think about what it would have meant if the thing you prayed for had come 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even 1 year ago. Think about where you were in your character, in your emotional maturity, in your understanding of who God is and how He moves. Think about the relationships you were in, the mindsets you were operating from, the wounds you were still carrying that had not yet been touched by the healing hand of God. If the blessing had arrived in any of those earlier seasons, you would not have been ready to receive it at the level it was designed to be received. You might have held it, but you would not have been able to multiply it. You might have touched it, but you would not have been able to sustain it. God was not withholding from you. God was waiting for you to grow into the size of what He had prepared for you, because the blessing that is coming is not sized for the person you were 2 years ago. It is sized for the person you have become through everything you have walked through since then. And the external landscape has been shifting too, in ways you have not been able to see from your vantage point. God has been moving people into position. He has been arranging divine connections that you do not yet know about, conversations that have not yet happened between people who will change the trajectory of your life the moment they cross your path. He has been opening doors in rooms you have never been in, creating opportunities in spaces you have never occupied, softening hearts that once stood against you, and positioning resources that are already earmarked with your name. All of this has been happening simultaneously in the unseen realm, while you were in the waiting, while you were wondering, while you were fighting the battle of maintaining belief in the face of what appeared to be silence. Heaven is not slow. Heaven is surgical. Every move God makes is calibrated to produce the maximum outcome with the minimum waste. And the timing of what He is releasing into your life right now is not a day early, and it is not a day late. It is the exact moment that the fullness of His plan required. And that timing is something you will look back on with a sense of awe that will take your breath away. Because you will be able to trace the hand of God through every single moment that felt wrong, every season that felt like failure. And you will see with clear eyes that He was always working, always building, always moving on your behalf, even in the moments when the evidence said otherwise. There is a grace that God releases in the moment of a divine shift that cannot be manufactured by human effort. It is not the grace of trying harder. It is not the grace of being more disciplined or more strategic or more relentless in your pursuit of what you want. It is the grace of arrival, the grace that comes when you step into the moment that heaven has been building toward, and suddenly everything that was difficult becomes possible. Everything that was blocked becomes clear, and everything that was withheld begins to flow. That grace is already moving toward you. You can feel the edge of it even now, in the stirring in your spirit that told you this message was for you, before the first sentence was complete. The waiting has not been wasted time. Every single day of it was building something in the unseen that is about to become undeniably visible in your life. The faithful prayers that seemed to dissolve into silence were not lost. They were accumulating in the heavenly realm like a reservoir filling behind a dam, and the dam is about to break. When it does, the releases will not be a trickle. It will not be a cautious, measured, barely enough kind of blessing that makes you grateful but not astounded. It will be a flood. It will be the kind of abundance that erases the memory of the drought. It will be the kind of restoration that makes people who knew your story look at your life and have no explanation for what they are seeing except the undeniable favor of the God who kept His promise. The shift has already been released. You are not waiting for God to decide. God has decided. The decision was made before you ever prayed the prayer. The decision was made before the need even existed. The decision was made in the eternal counsel of a God who loved you before time began, and who has been moving all of creation toward this specific moment in your specific story. What is coming is not a maybe. It is not a possibility. It is a certainty dressed in the clothing of the not yet, and the not yet is dissolving with every passing second. Sit still. Stay open. What has been released from heaven cannot be stopped. There is something the enemy understood about you long before you understood it about yourself, and that single fact explains everything. It explains the warfare that came for you early, the attacks that seemed disproportionate to where you were in life at the time, the resistance that showed up every time you tried to move forward, the strange and persistent pattern of things falling apart right at the moment they were supposed to come together. None of it was random chaos. None of it was bad luck. None of it was simply the hard reality of living in a difficult world. It was targeted. It was intentional. And it was the terrified response of an enemy who looked at what God placed inside you and understood the threat before you ever did. Think about that for a moment. The enemy studied you. He assessed the assignment written over your life before you were even aware that an assignment existed. He saw the anointing on you when you were still too young or too wounded or too distracted to see it yourself. And rather than ignore you, rather than leave you alone to discover who you were in God on your own timeline, He made a decision to come at you with everything He had, as early as He could, as consistently as He could, because His entire strategy against you has always been the same. If He could convince you that you were ordinary before you discovered you were chosen, He could neutralize the threat you posed without ever having to face the fullness of what God placed inside you. That is why the attacks came when they did. That is why certain doors closed at the exact moment they seemed most ready to open. That is why relationships that should have been sources of strength became sources of confusion and pain. That's why seasons that were supposed to be your launching pads turned into holding patterns. The enemy is not creative. He has one primary strategy against chosen ones, and it has never changed. He attacks the identity before the assignment can be activated. Because a chosen one who does not know they are chosen is not a threat. A chosen one who is buried under layers of self-doubt, discouragement, and deferred hope is manageable. But a chosen one who wakes up, who sees clearly, who understands the assignment and steps into it with full conviction, that is something the enemy cannot stop, and he knows it. Every attack you survived was a backhanded compliment from hell. Every time the enemy sent opposition your way, he was essentially announcing the magnitude of what God placed inside you. Ordinary people do not attract extraordinary warfare. Fields with nothing planted in them do not need to be guarded against. The enemy does not waste resources on assignments that pose no threat to his agenda. The very fact that you have faced the level of resistance you have faced is the most powerful confirmation you will ever receive that you are carrying something significant, something that disrupts darkness simply by existing, something that heaven placed inside you with full awareness that it would attract opposition from the moment it was deposited. You have to reframe your history through this lens. Look back at the moments that hurt the most, the betrayals that came from directions you never anticipated, the losses that seemed to target the very things you valued most, the seasons of opposition that arrived precisely when you were on the edge of breakthrough. The enemy does not attack your past. He attacks your future. He attacks what you are moving toward before you can get there, which means that the fiercest battles in your story were fought at the boundaries of your greatest territory. Every time the warfare intensified, you were standing at the edge of something significant. Every time the pressure became almost unbearable, you were one step away from something that the enemy was desperate to prevent. And here is what makes this truth so powerful for you right now. The enemy cannot create. He can only counterfeit and obstruct. He cannot invent a new strategy. He can only repeat the ones that have temporarily worked before. And the strategy of discouraging you through repeated attacks and prolonged delays has run its course. Because you are still here. You did not walk away from God. You did not abandon your faith when the nights got long and the silence got heavy. You did not allow the weight of the warfare to convince you that you were not chosen. Even when every circumstance around you seemed to be making that argument, you held on, not perfectly, not without doubt or struggle or moments when you were barely holding by a thread. But you held on. And that holding on, that stubborn refusal to completely let go even in the hardest moments, was the thing the enemy feared most and could not overcome. The scripture is explicit about this pattern. It does not say that no weapon formed against you will be aimed at you. It says that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. The The weapons are real. The warfare is real. The attacks were genuine attempts to derail something that God had purposed for your life. But the promise is not the absence of the weapon. The promise is the failure of the weapon. And every weapon that was formed against you in every season you have walked through has ultimately failed, because you are still standing, still breathing, still seeking, still here receiving a word from heaven about the massive thing that is now on its way to your life. The weapons did not prosper. They could not prosper, because the one who placed the assignment on your life is the same one who guaranteed its completion. And he does not make guarantees he cannot keep. There is something else you need to understand about the enemy's attacks that will change the way you interpret everything that has happened to you. The enemy can only attack what he can see. He operates in the realm of what is visible, what is manifest, what has already taken form in the natural world. But God moves in the realm of the not yet seen, in the space between the promise and the manifestation, in the invisible architecture of what he is building before it becomes visible. Which means that while the enemy was busy attacking the things in your life that he could see, God was building something in the realm that the enemy could not access, a life, a destiny, a blessing so far beyond what your current circumstances suggested that the enemy never saw it coming. The enemy thought he was winning in those seasons. He thought the losses were permanent. He thought the closed doors were conclusive. He thought the discouragement he planted in you was fatal. He was wrong on every count, because he was watching the surface of your story while God was rewriting the ending in the invisible realm. He was celebrating the appearance of your defeat while God was preparing the architecture of your most significant victory. He was convinced that the delays had broken your faith beyond repair, while God was using every single one of those delays to build a depth in you that would make you unshakable when the massive blessing arrived. This is the moment when that truth becomes more than a theological concept. This is the moment when it becomes personal and present and undeniably real. The enemy who attacked you early, who fought you through your most painful seasons, who sent opposition at every significant threshold of your journey, has now run out of time. The season he was trying to prevent has arrived. The assignment he was trying to neutralize is now being activated. The destiny he spent years attempting to derail is pulling into the station of your life right now, on time, intact, undiminished by a single thing he threw at it. Every sabotage failed. Every near miss was a divine redirect. Everything the enemy meant for your destruction was taken by God and repurposed as a component of your preparation. The enemy is not a match for the God who fights for you, and he never was. He was only ever able to delay the timeline, never cancel the destination. And the delay is now over. You carry something that terrifies darkness. You always have. The difference between then and now is that you are beginning to know it. And a chosen one who knows what they carry is the most dangerous thing the enemy has ever faced. There is a particular kind of pain that comes not from losing something you never had, but from losing something that was already in your hands. Something you built. Something you invested in. Something you gave your time and your energy and your heart to, only to watch it be stripped away through circumstances that felt completely outside your control. That kind of loss does not just hurt on the surface. It goes deep. It touches the part of you that dared to believe, the part of you that stepped out in faith and built something real, and then had to stand there and watch it come down. You know that pain. And God sees it with more clarity than you have ever been able to articulate it, even to yourself. The stripping season is one of the most misunderstood chapters in the life of a chosen one. From the outside, and often from the inside, It looks like failure. It looks like the evidence that something went wrong, that you made the wrong choices, that God withdrew his hand, that the dream was never real to begin with. But stripping seasons are not failure seasons. They are foundation seasons. They are the moments in the divine construction process when God looks at what you have been building on and decides that the ground beneath it is not strong enough to support what he intends to place on top. And rather than allow you to keep building higher on a foundation that will eventually collapse under the weight of what is coming, he removes what is there so that something permanent can be laid down in its place. Think about the things that were taken, not just the obvious losses, but the subtle ones. The version of yourself you used to be that you can no longer access. The confidence you once had in a particular direction that quietly dissolved. The certainty about what your life was supposed to look like that got replaced by a much more uncomfortable and open-ended kind of trust. These were all part of the stripping. God was not just removing things from around you. He was removing things from within you. Old structures of thinking, old dependencies, old ways of defining your worth by what you could produce or perform or provide. Old identities that were too small for the person he was making you into. The scripture in the book of John speaks of a vine and a vine-dresser, and it says that every branch that bears fruit, God prunes so that it may bear more fruit. The pruning is not punishment for the fruitful branch. The pruning is the investment in the fruitful branch. God does not prune dead wood for the sake of more fruit. He prunes living, growing, already producing branches because he sees a capacity in them for even greater fruitfulness that can only be released through the cut. The cut is not the end of the story. The cut is the beginning of the next level of growth. And the severity of the pruning is always proportionate to the level of fruit that God intends to release in the next season. You were pruned deeply, which means the fruit that is coming is extraordinary. But here is what makes the stripping season bearable once you see it clearly. Nothing that God removes from your life is lost in the eternal sense. Nothing that he strips away is simply discarded. Everything he takes, he either replaces with something greater or he refines and returns it at a level you would not have been able to receive before the stripping happened. The relationships that ended were making way for divine connections. The platforms that collapsed were making way for larger stages. The resources that dried up were making way for supernatural provision that does not depend on the fragile systems of this world. The version of your life that fell apart was making way for a version that cannot be shaken, because it is built on a foundation that God himself laid in the secret place of your deepest surrender. The losses were not the end, they were the clearing. And now, the ground is clear. The old structures are gone. The things that limited you, that capped your ceiling, that kept the blessing from landing. Because there was no room for it in the cluttered space of your previous season, they have been removed. And what stands in their place is open ground, consecrated and prepared, waiting to receive what heaven is about to place on it. You are not standing in the wreckage of your old life. You are standing on the foundation of your new one. And the new one is being built to a specification that your previous season could never have supported. This is the moment to pause and speak from the heart, because this channel itself has walked through its own stripping season, and transparency matters when the message is about trust. This channel had its monetization removed by YouTube. There was no dramatic announcement, no negotiation, no appeal that changed the outcome. It was simply gone, and a decision had to be made in that moment about whether to stop or to continue. The decision to continue was not a business decision. It was a ministry decision. Because the people who need these words, the chosen ones who are sitting in their own stripping seasons right now, wondering if God has forgotten them, they did not stop needing the message just because the platform changed the rules. So the videos kept coming. They will keep coming, not because of revenue, because of calling. If this message has reached something real in you today, if these words have touched the part of you that needed to hear that your losses were not permanent and your stripping was not the end of your story, then would you consider becoming part of what keeps this ministry moving forward? There is a support link in the description below and in the pinned comment on this video. Every contribution is completely voluntary, given only if you feel led and only if you are able. There is no pressure and no obligation attached to any of it. But if you have been blessed by what God has moved through this channel, and if you want to help ensure that these messages keep reaching the ones who need them most, your support means more than words can express. And whether you give or whether you cannot, we want you to know sincerely that your presence here is valued beyond measure. The fact that you are watching, that you are seeking, that you are still believing even in the middle of your own stripping season, that matters to us and it matters to God. Please like this video before you leave, because it helps these words reach more chosen ones who are sitting in their own silence right now, waiting for a message exactly like this one. Share it with someone who is in a stripping season and needs to hear that the clearing is not the end. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do, because the message that is coming next in this series is one you will not want to miss. The stripping is over, the ground is ready, and what God is about to build on the cleared foundation of your life will be the most beautiful and unshakable thing you have ever seen. There is a war that rages inside every chosen one, and it is not the war you think it is. It is not the war against the enemy outside. It is not the war against the circumstances that have pressed in on every side. It is the war against the very thing God is asking you to do in this precise moment. The thing that feels the most counterintuitive, the most vulnerable, the most contrary to every survival instinct you have developed over years of fighting to stay afloat. God is asking you to be still. And for someone who has learned to survive through striving, through pushing, through being the person who holds everything together through sheer force of will, that instruction lands like a threat rather than an invitation. But hear it again, this time not as a command stripped of compassion, but as the voice of a father who sees exactly how tired you are and is reaching out his hand to say, you do not have to carry this anymore. You do not have to figure this out. You do not have to manufacture the breakthrough through your own strength. The very thing you have been exhausting yourself trying to produce is already in motion from a source that has never once been depleted, never once been insufficient, never once failed to deliver on what it promised. And the reason God is calling you to stillness right now, in this specific season, is not because your effort no longer matters. It is because the next movement in your story is one that only He can make, and it requires you to get out of the way long enough for it to arrive. Stillness is not passivity. That distinction is critically important for the chosen one to understand, because the enemy will try to use God's call to stillness as an accusation. He will whisper that you are being lazy, that you are giving up. Stillness is simply defeat wearing a spiritual costume. But biblical stillness is not the absence of faith. It is the highest expression of faith. It is the faith that says, I believe so completely in the one who made the promise that I no longer need to add my own frantic effort to the equation to make it real. It is the faith of a soldier who has fought hard and long and then receives a direct order from the commanding general to stand down and watch. because the general is about to move in a way that no soldier's effort could accomplish. Standing down in that moment is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is trust in the one who sees the entire battlefield from a vantage point that the soldier on the ground can never access. God sees the entire battlefield of your life. He sees what you cannot see from where you are standing. He sees the provision that is 3 days away from landing. He sees the connection that is about to walk into your life from a direction you would never have thought to look. He sees the door that is about to open in a wall you had already stopped knocking on because you were so convinced it was permanently sealed. He sees the reversal that is already written in the heavenly timeline, already finalized, already guaranteed, moving toward you with the unstoppable momentum of divine intention. And from that vantage point, from the perspective of one who sees all of it simultaneously, his instruction to you is to be still, because your movement in this moment is not helping the process. It is simply wearing you out. You have been striving for a very long time. You have been the person who fills the silence with action, who responds to uncertainty with increased effort, who interprets the delay as a signal to push harder. And that drive, that relentless refusal to give up, has kept you alive through seasons that would have destroyed someone with less fight in them. God honors that. He is not dismissing the warrior in you. But warriors also know when to sheath the sword. Warriors also know that there are certain victories that are not won by fighting, but by positioning, by being in the right place at the right moment with the right posture, and allowing the battle to come to completion through a power greater than their own arm. The invitation to stillness in this season is an invitation to a deeper level of trust than you have been asked to operate in before. Because trusting God when things are moving is relatively straightforward. You can see the evidence. You can point to the momentum. You can feel the progress and call it faith. But trusting God in the silence, trusting Him in the space between the last thing that happened and the next thing that is coming, trusting Him when the natural evidence is not cooperating with the promise, that is the kind of trust that moves mountains. That is the kind of trust that unlocks the next level. That is the faith that the writer of Hebrews was describing when he said that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Not evidence that can be measured or photographed or presented to a skeptic. Evidence that exists only in the spirit, only in the settled knowing of a heart that has chosen to believe the voice of God over the noise of circumstances. And so God is saying to you right now, in the middle of whatever noise is surrounding your life, in the middle of whatever pressure is pressing in on you from every direction, in the middle of the waiting and the wondering and the not yet understanding, sit down, be still, let your soul breathe. Let your hands open. Let the clenched jaw of your spiritual striving relax for long enough to receive what is being carried to you from the throne room of heaven. Because what is coming requires an open vessel, not a striving one. It requires a heart that is positioned to receive, not a mind that is racing to produce. There is a posture that changes everything, and it is not the posture of the person who has it all figured out. It is not the posture of the one who has achieved enough to qualify for the blessing. It is the posture of surrender. Hands open, palms up, face turned toward heaven, saying out loud, or in the quiet of your own spirit, the words that will position you perfectly for what God is about to release. The words are simple. They are not impressive. They do not require eloquence or theological precision. They simply say, God, I trust you. I stop striving. I receive what you have prepared. I believe that what you have released from heaven is already on its way to me, and I choose to be still enough to receive it when it arrives. That posture, that surrender, that act of choosing trust over striving in the face of every circumstance that is screaming at you to do the opposite, is the most powerful spiritual act you can perform in this season. It is not the act that requires the most effort. It is the act that requires the most courage, because letting go is terrifying for someone who has survived by holding on. Opening your hands is frightening for someone who has protected what they love by gripping it tightly. Trusting the unseen is a daily battle for someone whose survival has depended on navigating the visible. But you are not just a survivor anymore. You are a receiver. And the receiver does not run toward the delivery. The receiver positions themselves, stays alert, and trusts that what was sent will arrive. Your positioning in this moment, your willingness to sit in trust rather than sprint in striving, is the final act of preparation before the massive thing that has been released from heaven makes contact with the ground of your life. God is not asking you to stop caring. He is not asking you to stop believing or hoping or expecting. He is asking you to stop carrying the weight of the outcome as if it depends on you alone. It never did. It never will. The outcome of your story was written by a God who does not revise his conclusions based on the difficulty of the circumstances. He wrote the ending before he wrote the beginning, and the ending he wrote for you is not a quiet, barely enough kind of conclusion. It is a declaration. It is a testimony. It is a life so transformed by the faithfulness of God that everyone who witnesses it will know without question that only he could have done it. Be still. The wave is already on its way. There have been moments in your life that you could not explain. Moments that arrived without warning and left without a full account of what they actually were. A number that appeared repeatedly in the most ordinary places. On a clock face, on a receipt, on a license plate, in the page number of a book you opened at random, until the repetition became impossible to dismiss as coincidence. A dream that felt different from every other dream you have ever had, not the scattered, storyless kind that dissolves within minutes of waking, but a dream with weight and color and a sense of presence so real that you woke up with your heart already knowing that something significant had been communicated to you, even if your waking mind could not yet translate the language. A moment of inexplicable peace in the middle of your most chaotic season. A stillness that descended on you without reason or warning. A knowing that settled in your chest and said, "It is going to be all right," in a voice that was quieter than a whisper, but more certain than anything you had ever heard, spoken out loud. You dismissed some of those moments. You talked yourself out of others. You allowed the rational, practical, prove it before you believe it part of your mind to file them under imagination, or wishful thinking, or the brain's tendency to find patterns in randomness. But something always lingered. Something in you never fully accepted the rational explanation, because the rational explanation always felt like an underdressed answer to an overdressed question. The experiences were too specific, too timed, too perfectly suited to the exact moment in which they arrived to be the product of chance. They were not chance, they were correspondence. They were heaven reaching through the thin membrane that separates the visible world from the invisible one, and making contact with your spirit in the clearest language available in the moment. Because God was not willing to let you walk through your hardest seasons without leaving fingerprints of His presence along the way. Every unexplainable sign you have encountered was a deliberate act of divine communication. Every number that repeated itself until you could no longer ignore it was a specific message encoded in the language of the Spirit, a language that your born-again spirit understands even when your natural mind struggles to translate it. Every dream that felt too real to be ordinary was a visitation, a moment when heaven pulled back the curtain just enough to show you something about your story from the perspective of the one who wrote it. God speaks in signs to chosen ones because chosen ones are called to operate in a realm beyond the purely natural. When he called Gideon, he confirmed the call through a fleece. When he was guiding the Israelites through the wilderness, he led them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, visible signs that left no room for doubt about the direction. When Jesus was baptized and the heavens opened, the sign of the dove was not for Jesus alone. It was for everyone present, a visible confirmation of an invisible reality, a heaven-sent signal that said, "Pay attention, something significant is happening here." God has always communicated through signs to those who are paying attention, and the fact that you have been noticing them, even in the seasons when you tried to dismiss them, is evidence that your spirit is attuned to the frequency of heaven. The numbers that keep appearing to you are not random. In the biblical tradition, numbers carry meaning that goes beyond their mathematical value. The number 7 speaks of completeness and divine perfection, the fullness of God's finished work. The number 8 speaks of new beginnings, of resurrection life, of the dawn that comes after the night has fully run its course. The number 1 speaks of primacy and unity, of the singular focus of divine intention. When you see these numbers in repeated patterns, in the quiet moments, in the unexpected places, heaven is not sending you a coded puzzle to solve. Heaven is sending you a confirmation to receive. A reminder that the God of completeness and new beginnings and singular divine intention is actively present in the details of your ordinary life, leaving breadcrumbs of his nearness in the most unremarkable places, so that you will know, even in the mundane moments, that you are not walking this road alone. The dreams you have had deserve more weight than you have given them. Not every dream is prophetic, and wisdom requires discernment. But there are dreams that carry a quality that is unmistakably different from the noise of the subconscious mind, processing the events of the day. Dreams where the colors are more saturated than waking life. Dreams where a figure speaks and the words land in your spirit with a gravity that persists for days and sometimes years. Dreams where you were shown something about your future that your natural mind had no access to, something that later came to pass or is still in the process of coming to pass. These are not the random firings of a resting brain. These are the moments when the God who spoke to Joseph through dreams, and to Daniel through visions, and to the prophet Joel's children through revelation, chose to use the same ancient channel to speak to you, because the message he had for you required a medium that bypassed the noise of your waking mind and delivered directly to the place where you could receive it unfiltered. The sudden chills that have moved through you at certain moments, the unexplainable weight of presence that descended in a quiet room, the tears that came without a clear emotional trigger, the moments of absolute certainty that arrived without logical foundation. These are the fingerprints of the Holy Spirit, the one who was present at the creation of the world, who moved over the face of the waters before the first word of creation was spoken. That same Spirit has been moving over the surface of your life, touching you in the moments when you needed confirmation, marking you in the moments when you needed to know you were not forgotten, stirring in you the things that needed to be stirred in preparation for what is now arriving. You have not been imagining these things. You have not been constructing spiritual experiences out of the raw material of wishful thinking. You have been encountering the living God in the language he chose specifically for you, because he knows how you are wired. He knows the frequency your spirit operates on, and He has been broadcasting on that exact frequency throughout your entire journey. The signs were real. The dreams were real. The presence you felt in the quiet moments was real. And all of it was building a single consistent message across every medium and every moment. The message that says, I see you, I am with you, I have not forgotten you, and what I promised you is still coming. This is the moment to take all of those signs seriously. Not in a superstitious way that replaces trust in God with trust in symbols, but in the way of a soldier who receives confirmed intelligence about the movement of reinforcements and allows that intelligence to change the way they hold the line. The signs you have been receiving are confirmed intelligence from heaven. They are the advanced communication of a God who wants you informed and expectant before the massive wave of what He has. Prepared makes contact with your visible world. Right now, in this moment, if you have felt the Spirit of God moving while these words have been spoken, if something has stirred in you that you recognize as more than intellectual agreement, if your spirit has been saying yes to things your mind is still processing, do not let that pass without acknowledging it. Type these 4 words in the comments right now. Type, I receive it now. That is not a performance. That is a declaration. That is your spirit speaking out loud what it has already been receiving in the secret place, and declarations made in faith create alignment between the invisible and the visible that moves things in the heavenly realm. Type it, I receive it now, and mean it with everything in you. You have been waiting for a long time, and in that waiting, you have done something that most people are never willing to do. You have stayed. You have stayed in faith when faith was expensive. You have stayed in prayer when prayer felt like speaking into an empty room. You have stayed in the posture of expectations when everything visible around you was arguing against the thing you were expecting. And now, after all of the preparation and the pruning, and the stripping and the silence and the signs, after everything that the previous chapters of your story have built toward, it is time for you to hear specifically and clearly what it is that God is releasing into your life. Not in vague spiritual language that sounds beautiful, but leaves you no clearer than when you started. Not in generalities that could apply to anyone, but in the specific, tangible, life-altering detail of a God who does not deal in abstractions when He is talking to someone He loves. What is about to hit your life is restoration. Not partial restoration. Not the kind of restoration that gives back a fraction of what was lost and calls it enough. The kind of restoration that the book of Joel describes when God says He will restore the years that the locust has eaten. The locust in your story had a name. It had a face. It came in the form of the losses and the setbacks and the seasons of lack and the relationships that drained you and the opportunities that dissolved and the dreams that were deferred so long they almost lost their pulse. And God looked at everything that the locust consumed in your life, and He made a declaration that has never been revoked and will never be revoked. He said He would restore it, all of it, not some of it, not the parts that were easy to replace. All of it returned and multiplied in a season of divine recompense that is now beginning to break through the surface of your natural world. Restoration in God's economy does not look like getting back exactly what you had before. It looks like getting back something so much greater than what you had before that the original loss begins to feel like it was the setup for the upgrade rather than the theft of something irreplaceable. Joseph did not get back his coat of many colors. He got a throne. He did not get back the pit he was thrown into. He got a palace. He did not get back the years of slavery and imprisonment as if they had never happened. He got a position of authority so significant that the very people who sold him into bondage came to him for survival. That is the pattern of divine restoration. It does not erase the wound. It transforms the wound into the credential that qualifies you for the level to which God is about to elevate you. What is about to hit your life is overflow. You have lived in the land of just enough for longer than God ever intended. You have budgeted and scraped and stretched and made do with less than what you needed, and you have done it with a grace that God saw and honored, even when you were too tired to feel graceful about it. But just enough was never the destination. Just enough was the wilderness, and the wilderness has an end point. The wilderness gives way to the promised land, and the promised land is described in Scripture not as a place of barely sufficient provision, but as a land flowing with milk and honey, a land of abundance so consistent and so generous that the concept of lack becomes a memory rather than a reality. That land is where God is taking you. Not eventually, in some abstract future that you will believe in when you see it. Now, in this season, in this chapter of your story that is already being written in the invisible realm and is about to become visible in ways that will take your breath away. What is about to hit your life is divine connection. There are people who are already in motion toward your life right now, people you have not yet met, people whose names you do not yet know, but people who carry pieces of your destiny that you cannot access alone. Mentors who will open doors that no amount of your own striving could have unlocked. Partners who will amplify what God placed inside you to a level that would have been impossible in isolation. Friends who will see you with a clarity and a love that heals the wounds left by every person who ever walked away. These connections are not accidental. They are not the product of networking or being in the right place at the right time through your own strategic maneuvering. They are divine appointments, arranged in the heavenly realm, with meeting times and circumstances already set by the one who holds the schedules of eternity in his hands. They are coming. Some of them are already closer than you realize. What is about to hit your life is the opening of doors that have been sealed. There are doors in your story that you stopped knocking on because the silence on the other side convinced you that no one was home. But the door was not empty. The door was being held by God Himself, waiting for the precise moment when what was behind it could be received without being wasted, stewarded without being squandered, carried without being crushed. That moment has arrived, and the doors that are about to open will not require you to force your way through them. They will swing open with an ease that will feel almost disorienting after all the years of pushing, and you will walk through them not as someone who fought their way in, but as someone who was always supposed to be there, welcomed by a grace that prepared the room before you ever arrived at the threshold. What is about to hit your life is healing. Not just the healing of the body, though that too is in the hands of the God who heals all your diseases, as the psalmist declared, but the deeper healing. The healing of the places in your soul that were broken by the things that were never supposed to happen to you. The healing of the trust that was shattered by people who should have been safe. The healing of the identity that was damaged by seasons of rejection and misunderstanding and being made to feel like less than what God created you to be. God is releasing a healing into your life that goes to the root, that does not simply manage the symptoms but addresses the source, that does not simply cover the wound but closes it from the inside out, leaving in its place not a scar of shame but a testimony of survival that will become one of the most powerful tools in your assignment. What is about to hit your life is a clarity of purpose that will end the confusion of the wilderness once and for all. There have been seasons when you could not see clearly, when the fog of uncertainty made it impossible to know which direction to move, when the question of what you were supposed to be doing with your life felt unanswerable, and the silence from heaven on that specific question felt like the most frustrating silence of all. That fog is lifting. The clarity that is coming is not the mild improvement of a slightly better view. It is the sudden, undeniable, unmistakable illumination of a life that finally sees its assignment with the eyes of heaven rather than the limitations of a wounded and weary human perspective. You will know what you are called to do. You will know it with a certainty that does not require external validation, does not bend under the pressure of other people's opinions, and does not waver when circumstances temporarily argue against it. And what is about to hit your life, underneath all of these specific and tangible blessings, is the deep and settled and unshakable knowledge that God kept His word, that every promise He made over your life, in the quiet moments and in the scripture that leaped off the page at you in a season of desperation, in the dream that felt too real to dismiss, in the whisper that arrived in the middle of a sleepless night and said, "Hold on, hold on, hold on." Every single one of those promises is being fulfilled. Not because you were perfect in your faith, not because you never doubted or stumbled or cried out in frustration at the silence, but because God is faithful. He is faithful not as a reaction to your performance, but as an expression of His nature. He cannot be unfaithful. It is not in Him. And the God who cannot be unfaithful made promises over your life that are now arriving at the address of your existence with the full weight of heaven behind them. This is what is coming. This is what has been building behind the dam of your waiting. This is the massive thing that God told you to sit down for before it arrived. And it is everything. This is the moment everything has been building toward. Not just this message, not just the 9 sections of truth and preparation and revelation that have carried you to this point, but everything, every season of your life, every chapter of your story, every sleepless night and silent morning and desperate prayer and stubborn refusal to let go of a God who you believed was still there, even when you could not feel Him. All of it, every single thread of it, has been moving toward this exact moment of divine summons, this sovereign call from heaven that says, "Rise, chosen one." Because the life that was always meant to be yours is now standing at the door of your present reality, and the only thing left to do is open the door and walk through it. You were born for this exact moment, not the moment before it, not a more comfortable version of it in a more convenient season. This moment, the one you are in right now, with all of its complexity and unresolved tension and lingering questions and the particular kind of faith stretching that comes from standing at the edge of something massive that you can feel more than you can yet see. This is the moment that was written into your timeline before the foundations of the world were laid. And the God who wrote it into your timeline is the same God who has been faithful through every chapter that preceded it, which means you can trust what He is doing now with the same certainty that you can now look back and recognize what He was doing then. Rise. That word carries more weight than its single syllable suggests. It is the word spoken to Lazarus in the tomb, the word that called life back into what had died and sent it walking out into the daylight wrapped in the evidence of a miracle. It is the word spoken over the dry bones in Ezekiel's valley, the word that preceded the rattling and the joining and the breath and the army standing on its feet from what had been nothing but death and dust. It is the word God speaks at the turning point of every chosen one's story, the word that marks the end of the lying down and the beginning of the standing up, the end of the season of burial and the beginning of the season of manifestation. And it is the word He is speaking directly to you in this moment, with a clarity and a conviction that your spirit already recognizes even before your mind has fully processed it. You are not the person you were when this season started. That version of you, the one who entered the wilderness, the one who walked into the furnace, the one who sat in the pit and wondered if the story was over, that version of you was real and was loved and was never abandoned for a single moment. But that version of you has been transformed by everything you walked through, shaped and refined and deepened and strengthened in ways that are only now becoming fully visible. The person who walks out of this season is not simply a survivor of what happened. The person who walks out of this season is a carrier of something that was forged in the fire, something that cannot be faked or manufactured or acquired any other way except through the road you walked. You carry authority now that you did not carry before. You carry compassion that was born in your own suffering and will become one of the most powerful gifts you bring to the people in your assignment. You carry a testimony that is not finished being written, but is already becoming the word that someone else will need in their darkest moment to hold the line. The life that is ahead of you is not a modest improvement on the life you have been living. It is a different life, a life operating at a level of divine favor and purposeful momentum that will feel, in the best possible way, almost unreal at first, because it will be so far removed from the survival mode that became your normal. There will be moments in the coming season when you will stop in the middle of an ordinary day and look at where you are and feel the weight of the contrast so acutely that tears will come without any tragedy to prompt them. Tears of recognition. Tears that say, "I cannot believe God did this." Tears that are the overflow of a heart that carried hope for so long without visible evidence and is now standing in the middle of evidence so visible and so abundant that it exceeds the hope that carried you. The people who are going to witness your next season are going to need an explanation. They are going to watch the reversal in your life, and they are going to ask questions that you will be perfectly positioned to answer. Because you were there for every moment of the road that led to the miracle. You will not have to manufacture a testimony. You will simply have to tell the truth. And the truth of your story, the unembellished, unexaggerated, exactly as it happened truth of what God did in your life after the stripping and the waiting and the warfare and the silence, is going to be the kind of testimony that breaks chains in other people simply by being spoken out loud. You were not just being prepared for a blessing. You were being prepared for an assignment that uses the blessing as the evidence and the journey as the curriculum. So rise. Stand up in the spirit right now, even if your physical circumstances have not yet shifted, even if the visible evidence is still catching up with the invisible reality. Stand up in the knowing that what God has released cannot be stopped. Stand up in the faith that what He has promised cannot be revoked. Stand up in the identity of a chosen one who has endured the full of preparation and has come through it, not broken but forged, not diminished but enlarged, not defeated but decorated with the kind of spiritual authority that only comes from having been through the fire and found God faithful on the other side. Your best days are not behind you. Your best days are not even simply ahead of you in some future tense that requires more waiting before it arrives. Your best days are beginning now, in this season, in this turning point, in the moment that the massive thing God has been building since before you were born begins to make contact with your visible, tangible, everyday life and starts transforming it from the inside out in ways that will leave no room for any explanation except the faithfulness of a God who always keeps His word. Before this message closes, there is something that needs to be said from a place of complete sincerity. This channel exists for you, for the chosen ones sitting in silence, somewhere wondering if God still sees them, for the ones who need to hear that their pain has purpose, and their waiting has an end, and their story is not finished. Every video produced here is made with that single person in mind, and the commitment to keep making them has not wavered even when the platform made it harder to sustain. YouTube removed monetization from this channel. That happened without negotiation and without a path to reverse it in the near term. But the decision to keep going was made immediately and without hesitation, because the calling does not stop when the revenue does. The chosen ones who need these messages do not stop needing them because the algorithm changed its policy. So the videos keep coming. They will keep coming for as long as God gives breath and purpose to continue. If this ministry has added something real to your life today, if these words reached the part of you that needed to hear them most, and if you feel led to help keep this work moving forward, there is a support link waiting for you in the description below and in the pinned comment on this video. Every contribution is 100% voluntary. There is no amount too small and no obligation attached. Give only if you feel genuinely moved to, and give only what you are able to give freely. But if you do give, know that it goes directly into keeping this ministry alive for the next chosen, who finds their way here at 2 in the morning in the middle of their own stripping season, needing exactly what you needed today. Whether you give or whether you cannot, you are loved and you are valued, and your presence here means everything. Please like this video before you leave and share it with one person who is in a waiting season right now, because you might be the instrument God uses to deliver the word they have been crying out for. Subscribe if you have not already, because there is more coming, and the community that is being built through this channel is part of the divine connection that God is weaving into the lives of chosen ones across the world. You are unshakable. You are unstoppable. You are chosen for this exact moment. Now rise and walk into everything that God has prepared.